And this game right here, as you can see by the title, the 49ers, they absolutely demolished the Cowboys. They put it on them 42-10 in San Francisco. Sunday Night Football, prime time for everybody to see. Look, we picked this game last week. We both said we figured the Niners, we both picked the Niners would win. We were correct. But I specifically said, I was like, everybody's saying like the Niners, they're going to beat them up. But no, I thought it was going to be a close game. And it was for like 2 seconds. And next thing you know, they're up 42-10. This was just a top to bottom beatdown by San Fran.
Yeah, it doesn't start out that way, but it gets that way pretty quickly. We'll look at it on paper, and then we'll talk about just how the Cowboys weren't quite able to finish this one. And they have an interesting QB comparison on this one. We think about who the QBs are, and we look at their stat lines. But as usual, we'll start with the team that came out on top. Brock Purdy goes 17 for 24, 252 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Did not even record a rushing attempt. I don't think the Niners want him to do that very much, so I think he had a good day at the office on that one. Jordan Mason actually leads all the Niners rushes with 69 yards. This could be because of CMC being such a defensive target, but CMC is the second one in line with 51 yards. Both of them get a touchdown. Mason does his on 10 carries, whereas CMC takes 19. Another reason why you can kind of tell the defenses know that CMC is going to be running. They want to hold him down. Maybe not as prepared for Jordan Mason. And Shanahan made a good use out of that. Got both of his rushers, got both of his top backs to get up at least 50 yards and a touchdown. Good day for both of them. CMC continues his really long scoring streak in the NFL. Speaking of monster days, though, George Kittle, massive day. Even though might have seemed kind of quiet if you weren't paying attention fully. He's 3 receptions, 67 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did all he had to do. Showed up to work, did his job, went home. So big day at the office for George Kittle. Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel both have pretty good games as well, getting 58 yards and 55 yards. But it would be Kyle Juszczyk who pulls in the 4th Brock Purdy touchdown. You see him score every now and then. He's a pretty good, solid piece of that Niners team. Kevin Givens would recover a Tony Pollard fumble. And then Dak did not have a good day. We're going to start talking about it right here. Deshaun Gibson, Fred Warner, and Oren Burks all pick off Dak, so 3 interceptions to 3 different people. Fred Warner, monster game. Every now and then we'll talk about the major contributions of one defensive player. He had a forced fumble, forced a sack as well, or had a sack, got the pick. It's a big day for him. We know Fred Warner is a big piece of that Niners defense, and he was able to show that big time against this Cowboys team. For the Cowboys, Dak goes 14 for 24, same amount of attempts as Brock Purdy, 3 less completions, but 153 yards, so 99 less yards. Not as productive as a day for him in the air. He would then go 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions for his TD ratio. Obviously, not anywhere near the 4.0 TD that Brock Purdy would put up. So rough day for Dak in this one. I actually had Niners fans chanting they wanted Trey Lance to come out, which is insane. Dallas's running game, something that Terrence and I talked about how it usually needs to get going, and it did not. It was led by Tony Pollard with 29 yards. From there, you get Rico Dowdle with 15, Deuce Vaughn with 7, Brandon Cooks with 6, Dak with 2, Cooper Rush with -2. And they finished out with a solid 57 rushing yards on the day. It's not good. And maybe, rushing games are going to get looked away from as the game falls apart. But I alluded to it, and we'll talk about it as we get to the, more play-by-play analysis type stuff. This game wasn't always away from the Cowboys. It finished way far away from them. But they had plenty of time to get stuff going, and it just didn't work out. And even with that argument, right, and you're like, okay, well, they got to turn to the passing game because it's a 42-10 game. They clearly got crushed. The receiving game doesn't do much either. CeeDee Lamb leads all receivers at 49 yards. Tony Pollard is behind him with 35. Jake Ferguson, 28. Kevontae Turpin, 26 on just 1 reception. Michael Gallup with 15. And then from there, we get 7, 1, 0, and 0. So not a good day for them. 161 rushing yards or passing yards total for them. Just a really bad day. Kevontae Turpin, though, was the one who was able to get that TD for Dallas. Did pretty much the only positive thing that happened for the Cowboys all night on that one. And other than maybe Jordan Lewis does recover a Christian McCaffrey fumble. But again, in the grand scheme of things, they lose 42-10. That doesn't do much. And so we talked a lot about the running game, and we talked a lot about the defense. That's kind of Dallas's 2-pronged attack, right? The running game is going to keep you alive. The defense can probably even score you a lot of points, and you can just stay in the game. Dak is not always like the worst passer in the world, and can probably keep the game pretty well managed as well. And all that falls apart here. Dak's game management skills go down. He throws 3 picks. The Cowboys can't rush. They muster up just 60 yards. And then the defense starts to crumble, and they allow 42 points. I think they're worst of the season so far. So really, really bad game on all three prongs of this kind of machine that Dallas has running. I think Terrence and I used that a lot, kind of Dallas being this well-oiled machine that they just need to let the parts run. And all the parts failed on this one. Running game got too rusty. The defense, somebody pulled the wrong lever and turned it off, and then Dak wasn't able to pull the weight of both the other things falling apart, and he too fell apart. So really, really bad day. We thought this would be a close game. Instead, the Niners came out and shut us up and put them down 42-10. But again, this one didn't start out like that, right? You have a lot of weird things going on to start this game. The Niners will score immediately, putting up 7, but then both teams will punt, fumble, punt. They'll both score a touchdown then. It's 14-7. And then from there, the Niners seem to find their momentum, get their mojo back, and the Cowboys were never really able to do anything. Get a field goal in the first drive of the second quarter, but after that, you don't want to ask the Cowboys what happened. interception, punt, turnover on downs, game over. Really bad night.
This is probably the longest segment today. I'd assume I watched some clips from certain shows. This is probably the longest segment for a lot of these sports shows today. But to be honest with you, outside of being the Niners and Cowboys, two big brands, a huge margin of victory for the Niners. Cowboys, obviously, everybody loves to talk about them, win or lose, everything in between. What is there to say about this game, bro? Like, the Cowboys were just bad, like straight up. And to make a point of how quickly things got out of hand, it was 21-10 coming out of the first drive for the Cowboys after the half. And the next 6 drives, alternating between Niners and Cowboys, touchdown pick, touchdown pick, touchdown pick. And just like that, you go from 21-10, 42-10. And you're just starting the fourth quarter. Like that's on Dak Prescott. Simple as that. You can talk about early in the game where the play calling, they couldn't really get anything going. They got the turnover in the end zone or right at the goal line. Christian McCaffrey fumbled when he was about to score. And maybe that would have given them some momentum since they were only down 7-0. But they literally did nothing for that. That got sacked on third down. Fred Warner, he was all over the place, got a big sack there. And they ended up punting from pretty much where Christian McCaffrey fumbled. So you can talk about the play calling in the first half, not really getting anything going with like CeeDee Lamb, especially not getting anything going, running the ball. But second half, your quarterback throws 3 interceptions on 3 straight drives. That's the reason you lose. I mean, I don't think they would have come back, just based off of how they were playing. But I mean, anybody throws 3 picks in a row. What do you expect to happen? I mean, that one, I don't really like to just put, whenever the Cowboys lose, it's easy to just put all the blame on Dak. But what else can you do? Mike McCarthy play calling because he wanted to call plays now. They got Kellen Moore up out of there. And, they've been more efficient this year as far as, not turning the ball over. And, they've won every game except the game against the Cardinals. But what difference did that make in this one? The play calling was basically pedestrian. Couldn't get anything going offensively. They had that one drive, which a lot of that was, just that touchdown to Turpin. You had the Jake Ferguson catch for 20 yards. And then that big play to Turpin for the touchdown. That was a good pass by Dak, but that was really the only big play he made that night. Outside of that, offense couldn't get anything going against his defense. Even when the Niners offense, kind of slowed down and had that turnover in the end of the first, early second before they kind of got things back up. It's just like, I mean, pretty much in all facets of the game, the Cowboys got dominated. Defensively, they couldn't get anything going. Obviously, they got run over, not by Christian McCaffrey, of course, which is probably the biggest thing for them, I guess. They shut down, quote unquote, Christian McCaffrey, only getting 50 yards, so only averaged less than 3 yards a carry. But so what? You let George Kittle score on every catch he got. For all you can say about Brock Purdy, I don't think he's obviously not a top 5 quarterback or anything, but considering how well he played, I mean, you have to say he's a good quarterback. I mean, even with these weapons, you have a top tier tight end, top tier receiver, pretty good number two receiver, and it's Christian McCaffrey right now is probably the best back in the league. You probably have to be a really incompetent quarterback to screw that up. But even still, Brock Purdy has played really well. He's been efficient, hasn't made mistakes. I can't remember how many touchdowns and picks he has right now on the season. Yeah, 9-0. So he's played well. I don't think, people saying MVP. I doubt that, but he's played pretty well so far. You have to give him credit. And it's not just beyond, it's not just not making mistakes. He's making plays. So the Niners right now, they're looking like the best team in the league. They probably are the best team in the league, I'd say right now. Even just slightly better than Philly. Uh, Philly's played some tough games, but I would say right now, I mean, even you could say what you want about Dallas, they still were at least a top half team in the NFC, right? So and after what the Niners did to the Steelers week one, and then they beat the team that beat the Cowboys. I think if they played again, this wouldn't happen. But this does show, this kind of exposed some of the issues very clearly, very open for everybody to see that the Cowboys have. Turn the ball over with Dak. That is something we've talked about so much. Didn't have really any picks and into this game. You had three. And then the play calling, offense overall, this is really the game where it had an offense really mattered because the defense couldn't score themselves. So now you're going to have to score on offense. Couldn't do it. That was the reason they took the L.
Yeah, and we talked about this in the preview where we looked at, what have the Cowboys done before getting here? 40-0 on the Giants, 30-10 on the Jets. They tore up New York, essentially. And then the Cardinals had them a 28-16 loss, and we all kind of went, wait a minute. Maybe this Cowboys team is what we think they are. And then they got 38-3 of the Patriots. And at the time, maybe it seemed a little more impressive. The Patriots have since lost 34-0 to the Saints. So they've had a bit of a fall. And now they lose 42-10 to the Niners. So they have big wins and major losses. Looking ahead, they got the Chargers, which could be maybe a problem if they can't seem to get it together again. I think that the Cowboys defense can come back together if the Chargers aren't that big of a problem. Neither the Rams, but they are in the NFC East. They will face the Eagles twice in this upcoming season. They got the Giants, which is maybe fair or easy for them at the way the season has gone. The Commanders might put up a fight, but in between that, they'll get the Panthers. I don't, as a Panthers fan, I when I see them on someone's couch, I'm like, well, I know how I'll be feeling that week. So November 19th, Cowboys and Panthers probably not going to be a fun time. But they do still have some tough opponents. Seahawks can be tough. Bills, Dolphins, Lions, back to back. Actually, Seahawks, Eagles, Bills, Dolphins, Lions, back to back. They're going to be really, really rough for a Cowboys team if they can look at the film of this game and figure out the ways that the Niners are able to break down and avoid this feisty Cowboys defense and to shut down the run game. That could be a problem. Now, some of those teams, like the Bills and Dolphins, might have some issues where they don't have the best or strongest defenses in the league, maybe due to injuries or just in general. But a team like the Bills and Dolphins also have much more high-flying offenses than the Cowboys team. And those could present some problems. So I think they'll finish with a good record, probably finish second in the NFC East. I don't think the Commanders will get over them, but we'll see how that goes. Niners, however, I think do look like the best team in football. And they maybe don't necessarily have the worst time ahead of them. I don't know about undefeated. I'm always skeptical to say that for any team. But they're going to face the Browns and then the Vikings and the Bengals and the Jaguars and the Buccaneers and the Seahawks. All those could be feasibly easy Niner wins. Then they'll face the Eagles. That could be a problem. Then they'll face the Seahawks, Cardinals, Ravens, Commanders, and Rams. So there's room in there for these divisional rivalry games to mess them up. Brock Purdy, actually, I'm pretty sure, hasn't lost a regular season game. So he's kind of having a Cinderella story. The Niners are on a regular season streak since like week 8 of last year. Obviously, dropped a playoff game. But there's much less room for faltering here unless they kind of, coast at the end and let it go to save injury time or something. But they have a pretty favorable schedule ahead of them with the way that the Vikings season has turned out, with the way that the Bengals season has turned out. Those games don't quite look as scary. The Jags have forced teams to play very gritty. If they can't do that to the Niners, then I'm not sure there's a chance there, right? And the Eagles, we'll have to see how that one goes. But I think that the Niners just got over one of their maybe toughest humps of the season. Haven't exactly had the hardest start to the season anyway, with Steelers, Rams, Giants, and Cardinals. So it's going to be interesting. The Niners could coast to have a really big season, another really big streak we might see like last year with the Eagles. And it'll be interesting to see who brings that down, if anyone does bring it down.